on a letter, but that didn't come to fruition. So if the last portion of the meeting makes sense for those things to come up, then if staff can just let us know if that's the appropriate place to have those conversations, then now we know where those items may come up in the future.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we were, for knowing what that process was, seems like it's been unclear, and I think we're told now, what is 11 months ago, that this training was going to make clear how do we raise those things. So if we're saying the clarity is, bring it up at the end, we'll have the discussion as a public, the end outcome is the best we can do as a letter that gets recommended on to city council for acceptance or rejection, assuming approval. Is that the correct legal procedure that we should be following to ensure we're both public and able to drive investigation of something we think should be changed?
Yeah, and the short answer is yes, that's the right path.
I would just add, if you're looking for public input on any of the items, it would be best to notify staff so we could add that to the agenda so the public would be on notice if they wanted to participate.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. And thanks, Chris, for the questions. We will get started with the meeting. Welcome to the February 2nd Plan and Zoning Commission meeting for the City of Des Moines. I will go over the rules and procedures before we get started. The Plan and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans and subdivision plans, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or Development Services Department staff for details on council hearings. Applicants will be given 10 minutes to present their request. Proponents and then opponents of the items from the public will be allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. The applicant will then be allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal. The hearing will be closed after the public section, and the commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the items under consideration, and the speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items that are listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendations of the staff provided in the staff reports, unless an individual present or a member of the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. Roll call. Minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting?
I'll move.
Thanks, Emily. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Any abstentions? Do I have to? All right, the minutes have been approved. Now we'll go over the consent items on the consent agenda. The first item is a request from Urban Dreams, represented by Isaiah Knox, for the following regarding property located at 1615 2nd Avenue. Items A through C. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to hear this item tonight? Anybody in the commission? All right, item 1 will remain on consent. Item 2 is a request from Hubble Realty Company, represented by Steve Mosley, for review and approval of the preliminary plat Woodmont on 171 acres of property in the vicinity of 4425 East Douglas Avenue, which would allow for development of 489 one-household residential lots. The property is owned by Darlene A. Feeney. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to hear this item tonight? That item will be moved to the public hearing agenda.
I just wanted to confirm, the individual that wanted, was in the audience? You're opposed to the request?
What's that?
Are you in opposition to the request or here in support?
Well, I want to hear more about it, but
Okay.
opposition.
Okay, perfect.
So that item will be part of the public hearing agenda. Are there any items that need to be moved to the consent agenda tonight?
No, I don't believe so.
No. Okay. Do I need to go into the rest of the items, or do we go straight into
We just
number
need
two?
just need a motion for item 1.
Okay. So anybody willing to provide a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
I move.
Thank you, Chris. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Anybody opposed, raise your right hand.
Motion
Or
carries.
any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, I believe Tsuruyoshi will cover item number 2, which I have already read, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sureshi Chakraborty, Planning Staff. Oops. Thank you, and apologize for the delay. So the item number 2 before you is a preliminary plat, the Woodmont preliminary plat, which is located in the vicinity of 4425 East Douglas Avenue. And the requested action is to look at the proposal to develop this property for 489 single-family residential lots. So this is the area, the subject property. So the plat that we are looking at is excludes the northern portion of the area that you see here. That's where the townhomes are expected to go, and the proposal that you're looking at right now, the plat, is for generally the rest of the area, which includes the 489 single-family household units. This is just, again, to orient you, this is East Douglas Avenue, kind of on the northeastern corner of the city. This is a huge area. It's roughly 171 acres, just to give you a scale of the area. So just a street view, as you can see, the existing use within the area is mostly agricultural and some wooded drainage type uses on the property, so it's undeveloped. Again, going back to the map here, most of the adjacent uses are either agricultural, low-density residential uses to the north. To the east is the Brook Run PUD. Again, to the south, there is agricultural and one household residential, as well as to the west. So this is, I'll just try to summarize here, and then we can, if you have specific questions about the various portions within the plat, we could come to those. So I'll try and zoom in a little bit here so we can see. You can see there's a variety of different single-family household lots that are proposed. These are the lot sizes. So total of 489 lots over here. And this is generally the street layout and the subdivision of the properties. These are the various sheets, and we can come back to this. Like I said, if you have specific questions about the various areas, we can talk about it. And as I had mentioned before, you can see to the north, fronting East Douglas Avenue, Outlot Z. This is for the future townhomes. And the Outlot X, this is to the east. This is also for the townhomes. And then this is not what we are considering in the preliminary plat for today. It's the area to the south. And so moving further, I might actually scroll down to the large-scale development plan, which will give us a better idea of the overall layout. So you can see the street alignment. This is Hull Avenue down here. Let's see, can I zoom in a little bit? So north-south connection roughly running through the middle of the site. And I think this map is actually a little bit easier to follow. As you can see here, as I was talking about, to the north we have the townhomes. This is went through rezoning and has been zoned to Annex 2. The area to the south, the single-family preliminary plat that we're looking at, is zoned N2B. The black dash line that you can see provides future trail connectivity, both from the townhome area as well as from the single-family residential area. There's detention, a few different detention locations that are proposed. There's one right here, and again here, if you can follow along my cursor, one right here to the east, and then there's a few more to the south. The wooded area that you can see right here is an outlot, and that's mostly open parkland running along the water channel. And as I mentioned, to the south, Hull Avenue goes across east-west. As you can see, runs across. There's Leiden Avenue connecting to the east. And then here you can see the continuation of East 46th down roughly through the center of the site, north to south. So with that, I think with the relevant zoning history, I already mentioned that the northern portion of the property was rezoned to Annex 2 to allow the development of the townhomes. There are a few additional applicable information that are listed there relating to drainage, utilities, landscaping, traffic, and as well as building. Staff is recommending approval of the preliminary plat subject to all the administrative comments. This is the consent map. We did not receive any comments back. And with that, that concludes my presentation. If you want me to scroll over to any of the maps, I'd be happy to do that and take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Suriyoshi. Any questions for staff? Is the applicant present? You have 10 minutes. Please state your name and address and sign in when you're done.
I will try and keep it much shorter than 10 minutes. Good evening, Caleb Smith. I'm Vice President of Land Development at Hubble Realty Company. Is that better? Okay, perfect. I don't have a whole lot to add. We've been working well with staff over the past couple months on this project, have made changes to try and accommodate some of their desires and some of our desires, and I think we've come to a really good project. We're really excited to get going. We are also working on our first plat, our first set of CDs. That'll be that first cul-de-sac, if you remember, that was up there underneath the townhome ground. So hopefully soon we'll have some development going out there this year, assuming that we get your guys' blessing tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. Yes, sir.
How are you going to handle the tree cover?
As we were planning this development, obviously there's significant tree cover in through a lot of these areas. Some of the locations, there's going to be some significant tree removal. In a lot of the areas where there is train, drainage, or significant trees, we've tried to plan around it. As you recall in the development plans, and maybe I can scroll here real quick. Did I miss it? There you go. Thank you. Some of these areas, inevitably, we're going to be difficult to avoid with our work. But as you can tell through some of these major areas and around here, while we do have lots backing up there, we've been working hard to try and minimize any grading to the rear of these lots, really in an attempt to try and save as many of these trees as we can. To make this development work, to accomplish the goals that we had set initially with the rezoning operations that we did on this property, the density we've got is what is needed to make this project work. Again, all the trees we do remove, we will comply with the city's mitigation plan, and we'll be planting new trees to replace those as we go down through the road. But we've made significant efforts to try and maintain as much of that existing canopy as we possibly could on this development.
What is the expected purchase price of the houses?
It's a really good question, only because pricing of materials is difficult to project. In the single-family lots, I'm thinking the lowest end will probably be in the mid-300s, and obviously we'll have some houses that go up into the 400s. A lot of it depends on what customer demand is. Two-story ranches, all those can drive different values. But we're expecting that mid-3s to mid-4s is probably the playground we'll be in on this, at least the first few phases.
What townhomes? Prices on those?
At this point in time, the townhomes isn't in front of the city for approval. Our anticipated range of those are in the upper 2s to the 300 range, but we're still continuing to work on that plan. As we get more details, we'll be happy to share that, and obviously we'll have an application before you for review.
Just to reiterate, members of the audience, you will have your chance to come up to the podium and ask any questions or share your concerns. Just so you know, things that are asked and questions need to be part of the record. That's why we give you 5 minutes so that you can come up and either share that you're in favor of the project or in opposition or neutral.
Hi. Did you develop all of the houses that exist around it, specifically to the east?
We did not.
Will your finished product look like those, where the garage is prominent in the front?
It will be. Inevitably, one of the things we propose with this development is to try and get smaller lots. We're trying to propose the smaller lots because it allows us to produce a product that is going to be more affordable to the average buyer in the market right now. So you will have garages out in the front because of the width of the lots we're proposing.
Will they be 3-car garages or 2?
There will be a variety. There's opportunity for 3-car garages, and it does depend on the house product that goes on each of these lots. We don't have that plan for every lot out here, but there's several lots out here that have the width that would accommodate a 3-car garage.
Yeah, because I kind of had a flashback of being in West Des Moines when I drove down the road there, of the ones that exist.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like Des Moines in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hard part about, we're kind of caught in this issue of, that if you take the garage away from the front, you're going to increase the lot width. And when you increase the lot width, you increase the house price. When you increase the house price, you take a bunch of buyers out of the market that our demographics are saying in this area, we need to be in that 350 to 450 if we're going to be successful. So it's not a decision we made purely for a profit standpoint. It's really a decision we made to provide a product that we believe will hit the market at the right price.
Okay. In the presentation, it mentions Brook Run Park as being a green space facility that's in the neighborhood. That park is quite small and frankly not even finished yet. With all the density that's there already and the 489 additional homes you're putting there, it seems to me there's really going to be a lack of just space for kids to get some running around or playing
Sure.
or anything. Do you have any plans to use some of these 171 acres on play space?
As we have it set up now, none of the area in here is being proposed to set up for a future city park. There are opportunities that we could continue to explore with city staff that can open up greenbelt corridors or trail areas or things like that, but at this point in time, we don't have anything planned, and that's kind of been the discussions we've had with staff, and I think we're in agreement on that.
Well, if we haven't had the discussions already and we're going to approve a plat, there's really not a discussion after it's approved, right? It's kind of already been made.
Agreed, yeah, that's why we're here, yep.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm curious on the scope of the plat then. So is the house designs with the garage on the front actually baked into this approval tonight, or is it just the plats?
No, the commission is approving the plat, the layout. What we were doing in our presentation was explaining to you what the zoning area is, or what the zoning is for this area, which ties to the different house typology.
Yep.
Which does, the zoning that's there today does allow for, an attached garage in the front. There are parameters to that, but that's not a decision the commission's making tonight.
And just to clarify, we're not looking at the townhomes either, or that plat.
That's correct. And then the townhomes will come at a future date.
So just to make sure, so if approved, this would allow for the garages on the front because of the actual zoning here. We're not affecting zoning, we're just affecting the number of sizes of lots that are here. There will still be all the garages with on the front is going to be allowed as per ordinance if this plat is approved with no modification. Is that right?
That's correct. The zoning that exists today allows that configuration. We're looking at layout, lot sizes, street orientation, layout, those kinds of things.
What was staff's suggestions again? Because this was pulled off
But
consent.
it was, we're recommending approval.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody in support of this project in the audience? Anyone in opposition? You may come up and you have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address and sign in after you're done.
Christian Archer, I live on East 43rd Court to the west of the proposed development. I guess a couple of things I heard, I don't know, Carol, I heard you mention the Brook Run neighborhood doesn't feel like Des Moines. To me, that's a good thing. There's a lot of parts of Des Moines people don't want to live in, and I think having homes that resemble a West Des Moines or a Waukee while being in the Des Moines city limits is exactly what people are looking for. So I guess the Brook Run part, to me, that's a good thing. So I guess I don't understand that. And at some point, houses get more modern, so they're not going to look like the, midtown Des Moines homes with the detached one-car garage. So the times, to me, are more modern, and that's good if the houses don't look like they belong in Des Moines. A question for Hubble, the time frame. We had a meeting back in the fall regarding all of this at a church there pretty close to our homes.
Could you,
And
sir, just So we're able to hear you. Could you speak into the microphone? Thank you.
But he's behind me. Well, I get that. Okay, all right, well. So the time frame it sounded like was going to be this summer, 2023, starting on the northeast corner, working to the southwest corner. Is that correct still? Okay, so townhomes first or not? Homes first, and then townhouses at the end. Okay.
He'll have a chance to, he gets to come back up, and so we'll have him answer those questions so that he can be heard on TV and.
Well, I guess the time frame is important to me because unfortunately I've only lived there for a couple of years, but the best part about that home was not having anybody in my backyard. I didn't have the $25 million to purchase the land, so unfortunately I wish I had more of a say than I do, but I just know this, whenever the development comes, I'm out of there because I don't think it's desirable for anybody in either of those respective neighborhoods to sit on their back deck when they're used to nothing and all of a sudden look at 6 to 8 homes on maybe a fifth of an acre of a lot, which is a very, very small lot. You're going to have a lot of kids that are going to be in that area. And I mean, Hubble, to me, they're not doing it for the price point because the $350,000 to $450,000 is the average price point of a brand new home in any suburb in Des Moines. So to me, that seems no different than Pleasant Hill, Waukee, Ankeny. So I'm a little, I guess, taken back by that they think it's a good price point for a lot of folks that want to live in the Des Moines city limits, because to me, that's a lie. But I would like to know the time frame. I guess more important than anything is I can't really stop this. I'm obviously in opposition to it, but like I said, I didn't purchase the land, so not a decision that I get to make. But I would like to know because I want to get out of Dodge as soon as I can, which is unfortunate. First home buyer, was in the city of Des Moines. We found what we were looking for, but Hubble's going to come in and do what Hubble does. There's also a development on Hubble, kind of by the new fire station there, northeast of this proposed development. There are some houses there right now, and I know that I think if a strong wind came, they would blow those things over. And I know that's the quality of home that they're talking about right now. There's no doubt in my mind that those are the houses that we're going to see in my backyard. And unfortunately, the houses built around that, both in Brook Run and on East 43rd Court, are of a much higher quality than what's going to be behind us. So I'm going to pay increased property tax, have more neighbors in my backyard, and not a quality home to look at either. So it's unfortunate, and I wish there were more people from my neighborhood, because clearly I'm the only one. But anyway, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition to this project? We have anyone neutral? You do have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Good evening, Caleb Smith again. Just talking about where our intentions are to how we're going to develop through this development. He is correct. Our intention is to start with single family on the northeast part of development, which would be this cul-de-sac that sits right here. Our intention is generally to follow 46th Street straight south through the development, follow the Spine Road, develop the east side, and then we'll come up onto the west side. So it'll be several years before we ultimately get on the western end of the development. Our projected timeline right now is probably a 15-year development for us, so we'll be here for a while. So it's not a plat every year. There'll be a couple years we skip based off size of plats and things like that. Happy to answer any questions anybody else may have.
Any additional questions from the commission? Any questions for staff?
Actually, one. Do you have a mock-up of what the homes would look like? And then what typical size of home, what is it? Are they typically like 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom homes?
Usually 3 to 4 bedroom, depending on obviously the footprints that we go with. We've got about 8 to 10, I apologize, I don't have the products with me tonight, but we have about 8 to 10 product types that we're targeting for this. I will say one of the things we do is we continually evaluate our product and what's working in the market, so that could evolve over the different phases through the development. But right now we're looking about 8 to 10, 3 to 4 bedroom units, some ranch, some 2-story, some with 2-car, some with 3-car garages. So there's some variety out there.
Okay. And then my next question, what's the average size lot? I think I saw a couple 7,500 to like 10,000 square feet And then how far spaced apart are they? I guess is my next question.
Yeah, so the side setbacks here, and we're proposing 5 and 5 for the side setbacks, so they will be closer. Lot sizes do vary. One of the things we've noticed in the market is that if you have a different variety of lot sizes, allows you to bring different product types, that seems to hit the market better. Some lots will be smaller in that 7,000 square foot, some will be 10,000, some will be a little larger than that. In this first phase, I think there's significant variety of all those.
And then, oh, shucks, you probably you wouldn't have a mock-up of what it would look facing forward, essentially.
No, I apologize. I did not bring those with me today.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I think that's my only question. Thank you.
Quick question for staff, maybe. Embedded in approval of this preliminary plat, have you guys approved those modified setbacks?
Yes, we have. Through the large-scale development plan, which is the administrative review. So that'll come into play, those setbacks will really come into play when the building permit requests are come in for each one of those houses. That's when we typically look at site, in a situation where you're already in a developed area, if we had an infill house, typically we're looking at setbacks, we might consider relief individually at the building permit phase. But since this is a holistic development, we have the avenue to do the large-scale development plan and start looking at those early.
Does either staff or the applicant know the difference between the average lot size that you're proposing and the average lot size in the development that the speaker raised?
I personally don't. I apologize. I don't have those stats with me tonight.
Does staff know?
No.
I mean, is there a material difference?
I'm just trying to look at a couple here, see if I can find a dimension.
Yeah, I'm getting on GSI quick too.
Yeah, I don't know if I can chime in or not, but between Lake and Bull, on my block right now, there are 14 lots, 15 because the homeowner has 2. On the proposed development in Humble, there are 19. So my lot's maybe a third of an acre, so I say between 9,000 and 12,000 square feet lot size.
It looks like maybe lots are in the width range of 60 to 65 feet. Does that sound, well, we can hear you, but nobody else can hear you. Brook Run to the east had smaller setbacks as part of that development, both in the setback of the house and the street, but also the lot widths being narrower. I was going to try to see if I could figure out an average for you on that, but those varied. We could pull up the aerial and you can kind of see the difference.
While we're looking at that, one procedural question, I guess. So if this is approved here and it's a 15-year project, would any changes to ordinance, would this site be protected from any changes to ordinance over the next 15 years? Like if there's any changes to ordinance, does this grandfather anything in here? Like let's say Carol wins out and there's no more front garages. Does that mean that that changes the design here?
Yeah, I mean, the relief that we're granting to house designs through the large-scale development plan is contingent on the current regulation that we have of house typology. If the code is drastically changed, then like a setback would have to be analyzed. We might have to look at the setbacks again. The lot sizes are set with the plat, so that's behind us. But the setbacks, if a drastic change happens, whether it's at the state or local, that might impact what our code says.
Yeah, so I just mean, so right here, if we're setting it here and code changes, would they have to come back up? So let's say the east side is done in the next 5 years. In 7 years, there's a significant code change. Would the west side that isn't done yet be impacted by that new code? Or would it always be governed, because we approve it tonight, by what's in play right now?
The platting lot size is completely governed by this plat. So we're making a decision on the plat. We are working with the applicant to do a large-scale development plan that's based off of our current house typology in advance to give them some certainty as to how our reviews will look. We are pre-reviewing house plan types and going through, okay, well, this would need a type 1 for a setback on a lot of this width, and so on and so forth, just as a way to try to facilitate development.
So I went to Polk County Assessor's page, and I just did ate quickly to the development to the right or be to the east, and they're like anywhere from 7,000 to 15,000 square feet. They look very comparable from my eye. I guess this would be a difficult question to ask, but how many of those are 7,500 square feet, or is that just, I know that's a tough question, but are they just a wide range?
It's a wide range. We honestly, 60, yeah, so, on the west side, so example for the west side of the development, there's a whole row of lots. Here, let me see if I can pull it up real quick for you so you guys can see. They're averaging 6,500 square feet in size. The corner lots obviously are always a little bit bigger because of the increased side yard setback. But all these lots are 6890, I apologize. Need to get some new glasses. And there's some that are a little smaller, but you're seeing, 64 to almost 7,000 square foot all along this corridor. And I'll say that those are on the smaller end for the lots we're proposing. If you look throughout the development, you'll see other ones that are going up from there. So we're really trying to implement this. We've implemented this on several other developments where we have multiple lot sizes, so it's not just all the cookie cutter 60-foot lots. And we've discovered that it actually drives a lot of interest, drives a lot of opportunity for different product types out here. So we're trying to apply it here. And to your question about the preliminary plat, so I've only been with Hubble for about a year, but I've worked with Hubble for 20 years prior as a consulting engineer. There's a high likelihood we'll come back in and we'll be talking about this. So if you get a code change with your zoning orders or something else like that, there's a chance we'll come back in because we have a new vision, we have new ideas, things are constantly evolving in our world. If we have a way to improve this development with a change, we'll be back at some point in time, most likely. I don't think it'll be for a while, but you never know, so.
Okay. And then I think my last question for the night, I was out in Grimes, and essentially it's a newer development. The houses are very close. They're not going to be comparable to that. It looks like a really tight street. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it's hard to say, and I say it's hard to say because I don't know what development you're specifically talking about.
Yeah.
With 5-foot side setbacks, if you build right up to the envelope, you're going to have 10 foot between the houses. It is kind of tight.
Okay.
There are developments out there where they are even closer than that,
Yeah, I
and they
think
have firewalls in the house that they put in to allow them to be closer. So I don't know if it's one of those situations.
Yeah,
or
they
something
were darn close.
And it may be that they took the hit on the construction side to get the units even closer.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I think that was my last question. Thank you.
Commission, any other questions for the applicant? If not, then we will close the public hearing and we'll hear your thoughts.
Yeah, can I start, Johnny? So I went to a talk recently about the housing shortage that we're going to be seeing in Des Moines. And I was a little nervous about it when I heard it. So I like projects like this because I feel like it's helping address future issues that cities like ours are going to see. So I am in favor of this and I move staff.
Thanks, Emily. Any additional discussion? We have a motion on the table.
Like I said, I think it's very comparable to the development next to it. I did some more measurements. The development next to it, it has like a 10-foot gap too, so if it's similar, it's going to follow the same design. I'm in support of moving forward with it.
I just have one thing to say. I am far from against density, but the lack of green space is really pronounced. And there may be these perhaps invasive trees that are flying through there, but there's nowhere to play. And there's going to be 3 serious areas in a row that have lots and lots of houses and no serious place to play. And I just wish that we would have been able to negotiate more green space. I'm not against density. That's all I want to say on that.
I agree with you on that. I agree.
Thank you. We do have a motion on the table. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Any opposed? Same sign.
Were you a part of the yes, the yeas or nays? Okay, all right, no worries, motion carries. Yep.
Our next item is a request from WCMRP Des Moines Center, represented by Nathan Paul, for review and approval of a First Amendment to the Southdale PUD conceptual plan on the property located at 4900 Southeast 14th Street to allow expansion of a retail use to include outdoor display in the parking lot. And Bert will be presenting.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Bert Drost, planning staff for the city. The item before you is a request to amend the Southdale PUD concept plan to allow the Home Depot store to continue to store some small storage sheds that they have for sale out in the parking lot in front of their building. So the subject property is, like I said, is the Home Depot on Southeast 14th Street. You can kind of see, I guess the next slide is probably better. They're wanting to store some outdoor sheds in this area right here. They have about 5 or 6 of those small 120 to 140 square foot storage sheds that they sell at the store, and they're just wanting to display them out in the parking lot in front of their building. This next slide here, now north is to the right. So if you picture where they're wanting to keep them is in this area right here that's yellow. I just point out that right now they have the approvals to store them in the green area right in front of the building, and then as I'll get to in our staff recommendation, there's an outdoor area right here where they have their lawn and garden and their plants and their seasonal sales. I guess just flash forward, our recommendation is that they relocate the storage sheds to this area over here that's already approved for the outdoor merchandising. But again, here's another view of where they're wanting to keep them. You can see they would take up about 9 parking spaces in the parking lot. They would leave about 6 spaces here between, I guess, the front of the building and those storage sheds. So here are some photos. This is looking straight east. Again, there's about 6 parking spaces that remain in between the sheds and this island at the west end. This is just another view to the east. This is looking from the north to the south. So you can see they currently have 6 sheds there. And then this is looking back west towards the building. If you look closely in this picture where the cursor is, there's a shed there. I believe up until this year, they had been, or until last year, they had been storing the buildings all along the front of the building, which is allowed. Just one more photo. Yeah, and here's that photo that shows where the other shed is along the front. So this is the PUD conceptual plan that was approved back in the 1990s. For those of you who've been to Des Moines a while, you know this used to be a venture department store that converted to Home Depot in the late 90s. This shows the conceptual landscaping around the perimeter of the parking lot. Then this next slide here is the development plan that was done back when they expanded the parking lot to the north for that outdoor merchandising. And then here's our staff recommendation. As I mentioned, our recommendation is that they be allowed to have the sheds out in the parking lot, but that they keep them consolidated to the area where they're already allowed to do the outdoor merchandising. This is just their summary of their neighborhood outreach meeting. And I guess that concludes my presentation. Any questions for me?
Was this from an enforcement action or how this?
Yeah, it was enforcement action from last fall.
Any other questions for staff at the moment? Otherwise, is the applicant present?
I have one question.
Will?
Bert, what's the rationale for the staff's recommendation?
We just feel it looks, I guess, I don't know if cleaner is the word, but more organized to keep all of the outdoor merchandising in the same area. If you read the staff recommendation or staff report, we did say that, if the commission or ultimately the council is inclined to approve what they're requesting, that we would ask that a condition of that be to provide additional landscaping around the perimeter of the storage sheds out there, just to soften the appearance, to make it more attractive. But really, our rationale is that we think it looks cluttered to have the sheds just floating out in the middle of the lot right now.
Can you scroll back to the pictures, please, Bert?
Sure.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? You have 10 minutes to present. Please state your name and address and sign in after you're done.
Thank you. I'm Jeremy Stroud. I'm the store manager at the Home Depot at 4800 Southeast 14th Street. I'm requesting that we can get the approval for the Plan B or the second recommendation from the staff. A couple of reasons for that. We've outgrown the seasonal selling space that's already been approved clear back in the early or late 1990s on there. Moving the sheds off the front apron is how we ended up with the citation, and there the location. You're looking at the back of the sheds from that shot that's on the screen right now. That allowed us to have more sellable space at the front of the store. Furthermore, moving the sheds to the north end of the lot eats up the summer selling space that we have there, and we've outgrown that space that we've got. That was the secondary reason for moving them to this location. They would take up the same amount of space in both locations, is something to point out on there. We also have had issues consistently in the past with the homeless that are in a camp that's down along Yeater Creek, which is just down to the north of the store. And when the sheds are in that location, they're further away from the building, especially in the summer. Those sheds will get moved away from the building to the east to allow for the bag goods and plants to be closer to the building for the customers that are shopping those. And especially at that time, it gives the opportunity for the homeless to go into those sheds and use them for everything from, carnal actions to drug use, and it's been a safety concern in the past and would be again in the future for both staff and customers that are shopping in those, looking at those sheds to shop in those. The sheds in the current location at the south, as they're pictured, are more visible to the customers. They've increased sales for that, and of course increases sales tax to go along with that. And then with the staff recommendation of adding, just meeting the requirements for the landscaping and making that as they're sitting look permanent is something that we're very willing to do with that on that piece there.
Any questions for the applicant?
Have you discussed with the city expanding the garden center on the north end to include more space for these sheds a little bit to the south of that?
No, we have not. No, that hasn't been discussed. But that is a possibility, yes.
That would seem to comply with the rationale the city has for putting the sheds there in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah. The flip side of that, the sheds in their location could stay and not move. If they're in that north end of the parking lot, we would either set them far away from the store and lose the ability to meet customers out there, or would make it harder to meet customers out there to show off that product, or we'd be moving them twice a year. So in the spring, we would move them away from the building to the east, and then in the fall, we'd be moving them back closer to the building with that. So it would change the location twice a year with those.
I'm sorry, I'm lost as to where you want them. I thought you wanted them on the north, near the seasonal sales, right? No?
So if you look right now.
Oh, you want to leave them where they're at?
Yes.
Would like to
Oh.
leave them, yep. So this is the location where they're currently at, and we would like permission to leave them there. The sellable space that was approved in the 1990s is this area here. And my point with this is in the spring, this area fills up, and we would want to push those sheds from up close to the building to the backside to the east, down towards this curb right here, which would require moving those back and forth. It is something we can do, yes, but it wouldn't make them permanent. It would mean that we're moving them twice a year. Over here, if we were to do the landscaping that has been suggested on the secondary plan, then they would stay here, they would be permanent in that location. One other small point on here, the single shed that was pictured up along the building was one of the last ones that we had was a clearance shed. That has been sold and gone. This area here in the summertime especially is filled up with the expansion of lumber goods and grills and wheelbarrows, so that the store again has that selling space to make that front of the store a cleaner look, and it's more appealing for the customers.
And again, on the landscaping, are you stepping up to come into compliance with your entire parking lot? Or are you just going to put some plants around the sheds?
To my knowledge, I think the suggestion was just around the sheds. But I'm
Because
not.
this is the one that got the relief on not having to do the parking lot. No, this is not.
No,
Okay.
you're thinking of Menards.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean.
They,
No
not
problem.
the
they
M word.
had to do some landscaping that was just really.
But they're in compliance with parking lot landscaping?
They may have plant material that is dead and missing that they're currently, regardless of this issue before us, obligated under
keep that in.
code to
Okay.
put back in. But just as it relates to this request and what's before the commission tonight, we're just purely looking at this, where to put the sheds, and then how do you offset that? And our thought as staff was that if the commission did want to support the applicant's request to put them along that drive aisle, that area should be planted more to current standards, not necessarily to, whatever the old site plan, but it's something that would really offset it, so.
So I'm just trying to understand, obviously, we're not on consent because we're in slight disagreement. It sounds like what staff is almost saying they're happy with is to not do one, to require two, and you're okay with two, which is the planting around it, as long as you can have it on the south there. Is that, is the recommendation in line with what he's proposing?
What we recommended, what our actual recommendation is that we feel it'd be best for the site, as far as keeping it organized, to have all the outdoor display sell stuff together, and there's already an existing area. However, we knew coming into this meeting that there would be discussion, he might provide additional information, and if the commission's so inclined to, based off of his testimony, to recommend approval of his request, we would say, well, at least if you're going to do that, commission, you should also recommend some landscaping around it.
So is the motion that everyone would be okay with, and they would be happy with denial of staff recommendation, rejection of staff recommendation 1, acceptance of staff recommendation 2?
Yeah, you would move the staff recommendation and just strike 1, is how you would say it.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any speakers in the audience in support of this request? Please come up to the microphone, state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes, and you can sign in after you're done.
Good evening. My name is Joel Rouse. I'm also a member of management at the Home Depot, 4900 Southeast 14th. And I just have one quick thing to add. Through the discussion between that north and south location, my only point to this would be your major concern, based on what I'm hearing, is the fact that these are a standalone sales product out in the parking lot, which I completely understand from an aesthetic value. Once the season is over and our seasonal sales products come out of that outdoor sales area on the north end towards Eater Creek, those sheds would then again be a standalone unit in the parking lot. And it doesn't take away the safety concern factor with the homeless encampment on the Eater Creek end. So that's my one point, and I'd like to really, strike home for you guys, is that at the end of the day, aesthetically, you still have sheds standalone on the lot through a portion of the year, and it doesn't take away the safety for the customers that are coming into the store. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in support of this item? Anyone in opposition or neutral? If not, then I will close the public hearing and hear what the commissioners are thinking.
Seems like there's a solution both sides are okay with if we move staff and strike 1. Both sides seem happy enough, and I agree with Carol, it is a barren parking lot. It would be nicer to have more stuff, and this almost may be an improvement in some regards there.
Sounds like a motion, Chris?
Sorry, I'll make a motion to approve staff but strike item 1.
Thank you. There's a motion on the table. Any additional discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. All those opposed?
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 4 is a request from Hubble Realty Company, represented by Caleb Smith, for the following regarding property located in the vicinity of 1300 Tuttle Street, items A through D. And Nick will be presenting.
Thanks. Chair, members of the commission, Nick Tarpey, planning staff. So as you can see, you probably saw in your packet, pretty big item we got here tonight. So it's one item, but we got 4 sub-items basically wedged within that. So part A strictly relates to the PUD amendment. So the property that we're looking at tonight is within a PUD, planned unit development, so it does follow a little bit different zoning patterns and zoning approvals than a lot of the other stuff that you guys see that follows most of the Chapter 135 stuff. So talk about that. Part B is for a plat. So we talked about another plat earlier tonight, very similar. So that's just to divide land, some new public streets. So I'll show you that. And then part C and D are 2 kind of jargony here, but final development plans, basically fancy way of saying site plans. So there's 2 site plans, there's a plat, and then a PUD amendment that's up for approval tonight. I'll try to walk through all those and wade through it and tell you what we're talking about, and also just try to keep it concise and not get lost in the weeds at the same time. All right, so the area that we're looking at here, this highlighted area, this is the area of the PUD. This is the Gray Station PUD, so south of MLK, north of Grays Lake, larger PUD area. So sub-item A deals with amending, 1, the layout of the PUD, but also the review and approval procedures. But specifically, the items that we're looking at tonight, the plat and the development plans, if you can follow my cursor, those are really concentrated like in this area of the PUD. So I'll go slow just so you can kind of understand what we're talking about. It's not the entire PUD, it's just a sliver. So this is a phased, large-scale development, and we're just talking about this one phase here tonight. This is a cover sheet of the existing PUD. It's a recent PUD. It's relatively prescriptive. It was approved back in 2019, finalized. What the applicant is intending on, what their proposal, their application to staff was to strike out one of the provisions, provision number 6, to waive review by the Plan and Zoning Commission and City Council for all final development plans or site plans. So we'll go back to that later. This map here is a large-scale schematic overview of what we're looking at here tonight. I really like this map that they provided because it does highlight this phase 1 here. So this is already platted, under construction. This area over here, highlighted with my cursor, is what we're going to be reviewing here tonight. So one of the development plans is outlined here with these 2 larger buildings. These are 2 large 3-story condo buildings, about 84 units, got parking areas here behind. And then the rest of the development involves an extension of both public streets, as well as some private streets and pedestrian pathways, as well as some amenity spaces. So if you follow my cursor around here, clubhouse, amenity type space for residents of the neighborhood, some green spaces, some program spaces like a pool, a dog park, pickleball courts, things of that nature. So we'll come back to this image, but just from a high view, generally think about extension of some public streets, some private alleys, some building of some new townhomes, a couple larger buildings for some multifamily residential type development, really just an extension of what's already there. Here's just a little bit more of a detailed view, providing some landscaping, showing some pedestrian linkages. So I'll linger on that for a second. And so digging into the staff report here, generally in terms of the plat, the development plans, the applicant's been pretty good to work with. Their staff, I think they're pretty much in agreement with all the staff comments. Really, staff is recommending approval of both the development plans for the townhome style development as well as the larger scale multifamily type development. There are some conditions in there, administrative type conditions that we did want to put in there in terms of labels and some of the final design elements that we want to see in some of the buildings. The applicant has shown that they've been pretty in agreement with that. Staff didn't have any concerns with any of the street layouts or utility connections or things of that nature as well. Regarding the requests to amend the PUD, the first part of that request was to slightly amend the alignment of Southwest 13th Street. So that's the street that basically frames the development on the west side that comes down. It'd be a construction of a new public street. The concept plan called for that to come straight down and T intersection into Grays Parkway. This revision just shows it to just shift a little bit slightly to create a little bit more of a cleaner intersection with Grays. The other part of the request that the applicant had was to amend the review and approval process of the PUD. So currently, as I showed you earlier, the existing PUD, provision number 6 there on the cover sheet, all of the final development plans are required to be reviewed by both Plan and Zoning Commission and City Council. It doesn't really make a distinction between the scale of some of the plans or I guess what exactly we're looking at here. And so I think as staff, we took that request in and I think we understood it. And so I think we worked with the applicant to try to find a position in the middle with that. And so as staff, our recommendation was, especially with a lot of the row home style development that's been seen around here, we have a development rhythm that's been established. We have some product types that the applicant has established and they're going to be using pretty repeatedly. Staff is pretty comfortable with the design of those and the layout of those. Any of the new row home, townhome style developments that'll be coming through here, staff is comfortable administratively reviewing those. Those don't necessarily, in staff's opinion, don't necessarily have to see the commission. As well as any amendments to previous development plans. So say there was a slight layout change that the applicant was proposing, maybe a slight use change that the applicant was proposing with one of the existing development plans. As staff, we felt that was appropriate, that we could review that administratively. However, with some of the larger developments, maybe like a large mixed use or like a large multifamily style development, there's still some ambiguity with how the PUD is going to develop. As we were looking at the maps earlier, it's a pretty large area. There's a couple more phases that are coming. And so with some of that uncertainty, just really the scale and the nature of that development, as staff, we still felt it was appropriate to recommend at least a Plan and Zoning Commission approval, just to get that through the public process. And another important thing to note too is staff, we're not recommending City Council review of any of this. So really, I think as staff's position, and you guys can really relate to this pretty well, I think, really we're trying to, I guess, kind of basically streamline the review and approval process for new site plans within this PUD, very similar to how we do it now. So administrative level review, and then a lot of the larger projects would see the commission. If the applicant may not be in agreement with the commission's recommendation, they would always have the opportunity to appeal that to council, but it's not necessarily required for them to go to council. So just digging into the recommendation here, I think this part A here, it really just summarizes what I just said. And then generally, staff is in support of both the plat as well as the development plans with some of the conditions that you see outlined here. This is the notification map. There was a PUD amendment, so the applicant was required to notify everybody within this area and have a neighborhood meeting. I'll let the applicant talk a little bit about that. They can describe that. But we didn't get any other type of comments or phone calls or emails or anything about this. So that concludes this. I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Nick?
How large is you're saying a larger project versus a smaller, how much larger before you think it comes here versus whatnot? I mean, like
so I think the language, yeah, that's a good, I was a little vague in that. So the language that we use would be like larger multifamily projects, as well as like a mixed use project. Any type of one household residential, so like townhomes, row homes, or an amendment to an already approved site development plan, that would be something that would be administratively reviewed, but like a multifamily or mixed use project, new construction, would be something that would be brought forth for the commission.
Are there any requirements in here, or any concern or risk with respect to connectivity? So, for example, this is a large area, single developer. In other places, you'll have a single developer will do a single deal with one connectivity provider, which reduces quality, reduces competition, and prevents potential future expansion. Is there anything in here that ensures that that isn't baked in, or is there any concern that's being looked at with anything that's here that would affect opportunity to make sure that this will remain an area that has good access to broadband?
That has not been discussed as part of the plat process. That would be, I guess, when they would be laying out the streets and things like that, that would be brought up.
Well, I thought you mentioned something about utilities. There was something.
Oh, sorry, I meant like
future utilities?
sewer and water and things like that is what I was referring to specifically.
Oh, so no connectivity, no conduit or anything else with respect to broadband or fiber is within the scope of what we're at now.
Correct.
So we would have still the same future undergrounding risk right now because we haven't considered it?
Well, I think the questions of broadband and all that that's really kind of outside the PUD. I mean, we don't get into that level of detail. So this change, none of the amendments before the commission will have an impact one way or the other than what's there today.
I'm just meaning, if we're laying down sewer, we may as well be laying down underground conduit for fiber as well, or we may risk not having access to lay it down later.
Yeah, and the applicant's probably better positioned to speak to what exactly they're doing for that versus planning staff, because we don't review that.
This provision to allow administrative review of future development site plans in lieu of public review by the Plan and Zoning Commission and City Council, that's applicable to this project only right now, is that correct?
So that would be for all future development plans that are brought forward, submitted to the city.
Yeah, so the PUD conceptual plan, which would maybe go to that early
the cover
slide.
sheet?
Yeah, the cover sheet. Well, actually, go to their graphic with the color. I guess we don't have the full PUD.
No, that's not in the PowerPoint, no.
Okay, in the PowerPoint. I guess the PUD as it exists today already establishes a layout, and we're going to switch over the document camera. Maybe they have it. This layout it represents what the entire PUD conceptual plan encompasses. So when this first came through, we established the road network and generally the different development typologies, whether it's the mixed use, multifamily, or the row home style product. But there was a lot, when this first came through, there was still a lot to be discussed as to what buildings look like. And so as part of the zoning, at that point, we had a condition added, that the council added with their action that said, development plans or site plans will come in for a review at P&Z and City Council. And since that time, a lot of the row homes have been built. Mixed-use buildings up by the MLK have been constructed. We have a couple buildings on Tuttle. And so, we're starting to get a sense of the project and the development pattern. And so the applicants request us to take a second look at that condition. And as staff, what we're recommending, they've asked for it just to be struck and just PUDs without a specific condition of PUD the PUD development plans, which are the site plans, those are reviewed administratively unless there's a specific condition on a PUD, like this one happens to have a specific condition. So they're asking us, their proposal just said, let's just strike that and go with all administrative review. As staff, what we're suggesting is that makes sense to us for the row homes. But where we have multifamily, particularly as you think about the buildings along the Beltway and what those may or may not end up being, we just felt that there was a need to not take this to City Council for their review. That's a little onerous. but have a discussion at the commission level, have notice to neighbors for those kind of mixed-use multifamily buildings. So in this drawing here, that would reflect the future gray buildings, really. I think you have one that's, the pink is the mixed use. So there's a couple pad sites for mixed use down by the trail, where the trail comes through in the southwest corner. But all that tan area is the row home products, which we believe there's an established pattern. I don't know if that helped.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, Jason. I just wanted to be clear that this only applies to Gray's Station as a complex project, as it were, rather than in the future for other projects in other places across the city. Thank you.
I have a follow-up to that, Jason. When you talk about the row home developments, is there a threshold that will be administratively approved under the current recommended staff action, or will it be any row home development?
It'd be, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the answer, the way, if the staff recommendation is adopted, none of the row homes would be reviewed publicly. They would all be reviewed administratively.
So if we have on the west side of this picture in front of us, if we have 10 or 15 row homes connected, the Plan and Zoning Commission will not look at it based on the recommendation.
That's correct.
How would you administratively, I mean, how different is different? I mean, like, often you'll come in, here's the exact same plan, we get the same box over and over and over, right? If we're saying it looks like the exact same box, I could just move that plan down there. We're saying, all right, it's the same box, same drawings, curved a little, slightly different, we're good. Is there a thought on how different it needs to be before there's a challenge, or is that not thought about yet, or we're just saying, row houses, row houses?
Well, in the PUD, the applicant or the developer has created several different designs, and I'm sure, so, and even with this phase, they've tweaked them so they're different than the first phase. We're just, as staff, we feel comfortable reviewing those reviewing them against the standards that do exist within the PUD, but also being able to point back to the past discussions we had and negotiations we had on the earlier iterations, and using those as the foundation for making decisions moving forward. So we feel like there's enough there that this will not be a problem to do administratively.
Does it basically give you type 2 approval authority?
No, because
No?
this is PUD, so that their development has to match the standards within the PUD. If we happen to disagree on something, then, we'd bring it before the commission, but it is negotiated by staff. So there's no standard to waive, we just measure it against the standards in the PUD. And again, part of our thinking is that not all PUDs, most PUDs are administrative. There's a handful of kind of these more complex ones out on the books, so to speak, that have some specific conditions in them.
Is there any condition that you've described or imagined, like what if the future phase got sold to another developer? Could it be developed under the same PUD?
Yeah.
How would that transpire?
Yes, it's possible for another builder to follow the PUD standards, build a different, come in with a product that matches the general materiality and styles.
Meets the PUD.
Yeah.
And if it was townhomes laid out as it's shown as yellow right now, it could probably get through that way.
But if they had something,
That
if
makes
they
sense.
wanted to go a different distance, a different direction, direction with it, then there is the process to amend it, come back and accommodate whatever they might come up with that this PUD didn't contemplate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Any other questions for staff?
Last one, the utility undergrounding, I noticed there's two major power lines, I assume we're saying there's no way those can be undergrounded, they'll just stay up over the top of the,
Talking about the ones way to the west here?
I thought the plan said there was like two main corridors of undergrounding.
There's a couple substantial transmission lines, and,
Sure.
and I think the applicant kind of speak to those, but I do think there's some that are staying, just due to the magnitude of them.
Sure.
But Caleb, I'll address that.
Thank you, Nick. The applicant, you have 10 minutes to present. Please state your name and address and sign in afterwards.
Yep. Good evening, Caleb Smith with Hubble Realty Company, 6900 Westtown Parkway in West Des Moines. Thank you tonight. This is one of our flagship projects. We're really excited about this. We're really excited to be looking at coming on with an additional phase. Wanted to talk about one of the reasons for the change in the clause of how things are approved, and just as an example for you. Our Link project, just up there off the edge of the page, when we originally planned it out, we had a parking field plan. We had some parking issues, so we investigated a plan to find out how can we add more parking so that we can, satisfy the demand and needs that we were seeing there. Because of the way the PUD was written, a simple restriping plan had to come back to P&Z and would have to go to council for approval because of that single clause. We thought, as we're going through this, as we're amending this PUD to accommodate the changes in the layouts that we're proposing, we thought it might make sense to consider talking about it. I think staff has come forward with what is a very reasonable approach to it. I think the townhomes, that's those looks, those styles, the size, the scope, all that's been well established. I do think that some of the multifamily stuff does probably make sense to come back to P&Z because that's probably where the most variety is going to occur in this development as we move forward. So I know we had a big ask to remove that clause. I do think this is a great compromise. I think this will allow staff to approve a parking lot restriping plan administratively because it really doesn't change the overall appearance or scope of the site. And I think that just helps keep moving things forward quickly for all. As far as connectivity and utilities, the overhead electric, that is a massive transmission line. We talked to Miriam about what can we move it, can we lower it, put it underground. It was multi-million-dollar project, high capacity lines. It's really unfeasible to do it from just an economic perspective as well as the danger of putting a line like that in the ground. Honestly, Mid-Am is not a big supporter of that. As far as telecommunication, typically our process as we work through the development is once we get past this phase, sorry about that, with the city staff, with P&Z and councils, we get those plans approved. That's when we really get those utility companies engaged. We've already started some of those conversations already. Our plans already include lots of utility easement corridors that provide where those utilities can go that will supply our units with all the telecom connections they need. We are putting conduit all throughout this development for both electric and other reasons, and we work with those telecom companies to provide those for them as well to kind of minimize those impacts down the road. So it's kind of a staged process, and we're just getting to that point where we'll be having those conversations to make sure that everybody has the internet they need, which is very, very critical in today's day and age. Other than that, I think Nick did a good job talking about it. The staff report was very thorough, covered a lot of the issues. I know we have a couple conditions in there. We've reviewed that. We've been talking with staff. I'm very comfortable that we come to resolution on that very quickly and get these plans wrapped up. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Will?
I was absolutely fascinated by these product comparisons. There's an old front elevation and a new front elevation. I'm fascinated by the reason for that and the process to come up with a new design. And then specifically, I'd like to know in one place in the discussion, the plan says darker colors are more appropriate for the urban setting. Mm-hmm. Would you talk about that, please?
Unfortunately, I am not the one that deals with a lot of the horizontal stuff. My role is, or the vertical stuff, I'm more the horizontal. But I can tell you what we discovered in phase one. We learned a lot in the first portion of this development. As you go to the product type that has all the colored drawings, You can see a wide variety of products out there. But what we discovered, what sold best between this and other similar projects, were those darker colors and were some of those changes we're proposing. Some of it didn't make sense to me, but that's what the data was suggesting. So we also don't just base it purely off of what we're seeing here in the metro. We have a network of builders that we're connected to across the country, and we can see these trends across the country coming. We're just trying to be proactive and responsive to it, and we think this is what's going to help this project be a success. I'd be saying tonight, I'd be lying if I'd said we're happy with how fast things have built out there. So we're trying to find ways to spur activity and growth in this community. One of them is a change in elevations. Some of it's some of the other community activities that we're going to start implementing again this year. We've got a wide range of things we're looking at to try and build more activity and interest in this community. And this is just one of those pieces we figured out we think is going to help us.
It was very interesting to me to see that you tried to emphasize verticality, and I can see that in the downtown. That makes perfect sense to me. But the business of changing the colors, that remained a question to me, and now you've kind of explained it to me. It's the market.
And I apologize. I am giving it to you at the 2-mile level that I have of the information. We have other folks on our team that could give you way more detail on that if you're interested. But it is intriguing, and we're hopeful it works.
Thank you. Anyone else? Carol?
Hi. Could you just, are all of these rental units, or is it could you just give a breakdown of
Yes.
buildings and the ownership type?
So all the townhome units you see colored in here, with exception of the brown building that's kind of on the lower left-hand side, that's our clubhouse. All the other units are for sale product. So they have their own lot.
They're fee simple individually?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
The area that's in white, kind of in the upper left portion, that's our Telus project. That's also owned by individual property owners. It is not a rental community. Now, can someone buy it and rent it? Absolutely. They have that right if they buy it, but it is not intended to be a rental community, and we do not intend to run that as a rental operation.
Okay. So none of this is rental? They're all?
Not in this phase.
And we're in phase not one, but black and white, right? That's what we're talking about?
The black and white, and then the
extension.
brighter colored stuff to the south
Okay.
of there. Yes, ma'am.
Did I read somewhere there was going to be an 8-story building, or was I delusional on that?
Michael, I don't believe we had an
8-story
building
building,
in our
Y
project.
and Z?
Well, that's future phases, and
Okay.
I think Y and Z isn't that down by the Greenway?
Yeah, I would say it's very early in that process. We actually just kind of started conversations about what that space really ultimately can look like, size of the building, all that stuff. Give us a little time, we'll come back.
So that's not in scope?
No, ma'am.
Okay. There were so many sheets, and I took so many notes, it was unfortunate. I didn't quite understand what was in
I
scope
was
and
going
what
to
wasn't.
print everything that we have submitted to staff for this meeting to have it ready, and I was like, I'm not going to kill 10 trees tonight. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
yeah,
So-
rock on. So I have another question about parking, which is my favorite question.
Yes.
So the row homes all have their individual 2-stall parking, right?
Correct.
This multifamily, when you say multifamily, what does that mean to you?
Well, maybe I'll have Michael Bialis. He works with our development team, and the way we kind of split our world up is my job is to get the ground ready for people to start building up. His team is one of the teams that helps do our multifamily projects. I'll ask him to come up, and he'll give you some better answers.
Okay.
Ryan's going to come up.
Good evening, Ryan Harsey, engineer with Civil Design Advantage. I'm the project engineer for Telus and for the townhome project. So that Telus product has 84 total units. With that, there's a total of 137 parking spaces. So we have 84 garages total on the site. A few of them are detached, and the majority of them are attached under the building. So for every unit, there's a garage space available, and then there's surface parking available for the remainder of the development. So 137 total spaces just for that Telus area.
So there's more than 1-to-1?
Yes.
Why?
The reason why is because, how do we flip back to this guy? So originally in 2017, when we started to plan out that link product for those apartments, we did a lot of market study research as we went through that development plan, and we had it closer to a one-to-one. And with that and the success of that product, we found that there wasn't enough parking actually once it was all fully rented out, and that's why we had to go do a parking lot restriping plan last summer that had to go through City Council for approval to restripe the parking lot. So based upon what we learned with that initial plan, that kind of revamped this phase of TELUS, and it told us that we really need to have more parking per unit.
Okay, so does parking come when you buy the unit, which, how many stories are these multi-family buildings?
3-story.
3-story. When you buy your unit, do you get parking included as a gift with purchase?
I will let Michael Bialis, I'm just an engineer.
I'm just a Bill and a Mo.
Michael Bialis, Hubble Realty, 6900 West Town Parkway.
Okay.
Those get sold separately. So it'll be a separate deed for the garages that will get sold separate from the units themselves.
And the surface spots are deeded
Surface
as well?
spaces are available for sale too. We don't always sell them. If we don't, they turn over to the association.
So do you offer any indoor bike storage so that maybe you wouldn't have to have as many people have so many cars because you're right on a prominent bike path?
Yep, that is something we're exploring. We'd like to keep one of those garages available and turn it into bike storage.
What does that mean that you'd like to? Does that mean you're going to do it, or?
Potentially. Yeah, it's hard for me to say. 'Cause
I mean, I don't know how much you sell a parking space.
If we have a buyer for the garage, we'll obviously sell that garage to the person. We'd rather keep the residents happy and provide those garages to them prior to converting one to a bike storage room.
I would just encourage you to think a little bit further down the road and where we are in this environment, in that you're not offering any EV charging stations. I didn't see any anywhere that in your existing unit. I don't see any in your list. The bike parking you show is not ADA compliant. The stuff that's there is not adequate. You're not thinking about a way to get people to use less cars. You're thinking about a way to make more cars fit. I just think you're putting in the reason for more people to own more cars, rather than accommodating people that don't own cars or encouraging people to use other ways to get around. There's a DART line that goes right through there. You're on a bike path. You guys are the big forward thinkers. I think you're missing something here. Anyone?
I'll counter that a little, Carol. I live in a townhome over here in the East Village, and we have had parking issues. So everyone gets a garage. I myself put my own EV charger in, so I think you can probably, if you deed that out, you can put your own EV charger in your own garage. That's always an option. But I understand the need for more parking, because if you invite people over or if you have service people come, they have nowhere to park. And that makes it very challenging to live in these urban areas where you need people to be able to come over, but you only have like one garage.
And that feedback was in line with what we received our last condominium project, the Edison, over on Southwest 7th Street, is that just there wasn't enough overall parking. And so that's why we tried to go to the one-to-one garage parity here and have the additional surface space.
And the garages are, when you say, but they're a two-car garage?
No, these are single-car garages.
Oh, they're single-car garages?
Single-car garages.
Okay. Are they, well, you can put in your own charger, but you got to have all the electric guts, right, to go to that? Is that part available? The type 2, the level 2 or type 2, I can't remember which one. Electrical? You know, because it's easier to put it in, right, when you're putting it in new?
Mm-hmm.
Are you accommodating for that at all in the garages?
We've talked about running enough voltage into those units so that we could upgrade if people require them.
I just think it's disappointing that you're the biggest, right, in the city, that you're not being more green or sustainable or forward-looking. You don't have solar panels, you're going to have these big 8-story buildings looking south. You've got, more than one-to-one parking. You're putting in not adequate bike storage. I think it's just really disappointing. I think you should be the leader in the city in that rather than not.
Thanks, Carol. Any other commissioners have questions or comments for the applicants?
So I've been down there twice for trivia night at Mad Meatball, and the parking is, it's pretty horrendous. I had to park over by the Starbucks and walk a couple blocks just to get there. But to chime in, I would like to see some promotion of bikeability. Definitely, I went to your guys' website and you're selling it as a walkable, bikeable space. So I'd like to see that. Definitely be utilized and promote it more. But the parking issue is it's bad, and definitely as a business owner down there, I would like for there to be parking so people can come spend dollars and then come back and reuse it again. So yeah, I guess try to find the balance, but bikeability would be huge. Definitely with how many people are in that concentrated area.
Ryan Harsey, engineer on the project. I just want to note that we do have 20 bike parking spaces at the main entry to the site.
Are they in the building?
They're exterior to the building. They are located, switch back to they're located at this main entry feature in this area where you come off the Southwest 13th into we've got a stack of bike parking here and then a stack here.
One last question. Is the goal for these units to be able to apply for tax abatement?
Yeah, it's part of the plan for both TELUS as well as the townhome projects is to apply for tax abatement. Obviously, there's requirements to do so, and we're intending on meeting the necessary requirements to meet that.
And staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there are some requirements when it comes to tax abatement as far as, sustainability and EV chargers and whatnot. Is that right?
So yeah, they do have that requirement. There's specific requirements within, it's called River Point West area of downtown. They have to follow the second urban revitalization plan. So I believe the tax abatement criteria that they're trying to get is proximity to a DART line, 50%, increase in 50% of the required landscaping. There's a couple other ones in there. I don't know, that's something we're still working out, but basically it's different tax abatement standards than what exists now. So that was approved, a couple iterations of tax abatement ago. And so we're working with them to make sure that they comply with that, basically.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, am I correct in having heard that Hubble is in agreement with the staff recommendations?
We are. We're confident we'll come to resolution on anything that still remains outstanding.
Okay, if there are no more questions, are there any speakers in the public in support of this item? You have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address and sign in after you're done.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. Good evening, staff. Troy Hall. I am at 2530 University Avenue, apartment 101, right across the street from Drake University. I'm generally in support of this development. I would like to continue to see the densification of downtown and the surrounding areas. I think it would be beneficial for younger people, but also families and even older folks to have more diversity in housing. Combating that missing middle that we see a lot, we don't have a lot of availability of right now. I'm encouraged to see this conceptual plan. I was looking at it before the meeting just to educate myself a little bit on it. With that, I would like to encourage the developer to embrace architectural diversity like they have with this plan here. And then the only other thing is that I agree with the parking concerns. I'd like to see 1-to-1 or actually less than 1-to-1 so that we can give folks those options in transportation, because at some point you have to do that. In terms of visitors, I would like to know if there are street parking options available for that. I know that that's what I encourage my friends and relatives to do when they come visit me. That always works out pretty well. So that's all that I have. I'll keep it brief. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any additional speakers in support of this item? Anyone in opposition or neutral? Okay, the applicant does have 5 minutes for rebuttal if they, all right. With that, I will close the public hearing and let the commissioners discuss.
I think I do agree with Carol, and I do think that the strategy around the abatements near a bus line, like as they're implemented in every other municipality when you do something like that, is that we can drive parking ratios down because we have access to alternative uses. It would be odd to go against the logic of that mechanism. So in this case, yeah, do we still have enough parking we need? Sure. I hear the point that if we have to walk 3 blocks, that is not always convenient, but our parking issues, even in Sherman Hill, are nothing compared to the quality of the neighborhoods when you actually have them densified. So I would hope we aren't straying from the underlying strategy of why those abatements are there, what we're looking to do at densification, and what the future of the city should look like, not what it looks like now.
Now, this is a very complex project. It's been going on for a long time. As the representative for the developer has said, it's a flagship property. I think at this point, it would be best to move the staff recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Any additional comments or discussion? If not, everyone in support of the motion, please raise your right hand. Anyone in opposition? Same sign. Any abstentions?
I have a question. I didn't think you could abstain if you discussed the item actively during the meeting. Is that a rule, Jason?
Any comment on that, Lisa?
We don't see abstentions all that often. Usually you do vote, but if there's a reason, I think in this case, Chris has often abstained in the past, and we have not, we've always allowed him to do it that way.
Motion carries, by the way, it was voted on. Motion is made, voted, it carries.
Thank you. That brings up the end of our public hearing items. Are there any other committee or directors' reports?
Just to note that I believe we'll have a 5:30 session at the next meeting as well, so hopefully everybody can make it to that early part of the meeting. So, thank you.
Do we need to make a motion to adjourn? Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.